Hold on. All right, everybody, this is a guided walkthrough for the admin challenge over at VulNyx.com. This is a Windows challenge, and let's get started. All right, so the first thing we want to do when we do these CTF box challenges is to find out where the machine is on the network. So we can do that with the nmap program, and the nmap program run with the SN argument over here is going to conduct what is called a ping sweep. So ping sweeping is basically just trying to find out what machines are online in a particular network range. And this network range has 255 hosts. We're going to find out which ones are online. Okay, so it looks like there are only 2 devices on the network that are virtual machines, which are number 5, which is our IP address, and number 24. So our target is on the 24 address over here. The machine is at this IP address right here. Let's go ahead and scan it with nmap. So we're just going to run nmap, and we're going to run it against all ports. We're going to run it very verbose. We're going to run it very, very fast, and we're going to run it with versioning information and common scripts with this particular argument here. And let's get going. The most important thing to do is run it with very verbose, which means that we're going to see output before the scan finishes, because otherwise we're not going to see anything until the scan finishes completely. Okay, so we're going to run it here, and we see that we've got all of our typical Windows ports open. We've got 139, 445, and 135, and a bunch of ports open on the 40,000 range, and that's very normal for Windows machines. Okay, so the other thing that we have to take note for this machine is that there's port 80 open, and port 80 indicates that there's some sort of web page available on this system. So what we need to do next is we need to investigate the web port. Hold on. Okay, so we're just going to go to our web enumeration tab here, and we're going to run GoBuster. Actually, let's go run GoBuster. GoBuster. So GoBuster is a directory busting tool. Directory busting is basically finding out which endpoints are available on a particular web server, and we're going to run it like this. We're going to look for a bunch of different extensions. We're going to look for PHP pages. Actually, maybe we can look for ASPX pages, HTML, TXT, a bunch of different file formats. Over here with the -x, we need to supply an IP address, which is this one over here, and we need to supply the word list that we're going to use to compare it against. The standard one for doing these kind of CTF exercises is the directory list 2.3 medium.txt file. So let's go ahead and use this to scan this web server. Okay, let's go back to GoBuster, and GoBuster found this file over here on the system called tasks.txt. So we can go ahead and check it out. So in our web browser, we're going to go to /24 task.txt. Okay, so in this task.txt file, there's a bunch of information here: finish the website, update the OS, drink coffee, change the password. But the most important thing that we get out of this is that there's a user on the system named Hope. So this means that we can use this username and we can brute force their password. So a lot of easy challenges have to they utilize brute forcing as a primary tool, but let's talk about a little bit more about this. So this is SMB credential brute forcing. So we were able to determine a potential username on the server, and we can brute force this user's password if it is sufficiently weak. So when we do brute forcing, we like to use a tool called netexec. Netexec is kind of a all-in-one tool that is used for Windows security testing, and it's usually abbreviated to NXC. So NXC, this is the name of the command. We run it against the SMB protocol. We have to supply the IP address over here, and we have to supply the name of the user that we want to brute force. So the last thing we do is we supply the list, the password list that we want to use for brute forcing. And it's going to be this one over here, the rocku.txt list. So the rocku.txt list is a list of the most common 14 million passwords. It's very commonly used for these kind of CTF exercises. So the last thing we need to do when we're running netexec to do brute forcing with the rocku.txt list is to give this little flag right here, which is called ignore password decoding. So I think that's because there's some sort of weird, there's some sort of non-standard character encoding inside this file. So that's why we need to give that flag. So let's go ahead and run this. It's going to try to brute force the password for the hope user on the system. It goes pretty fast. After a little bit, it comes back with this result over here. Okay, so we see here that we've managed to brute force the password for the hope user over here. And from here, what we need to do is we need to confirm that this is a valid credential pair. So we're just going to run netexec again, and we're going to check that this is the correct password. So we see here that we got a positive result. It says that hope and loser is a correct password pair, credential pair rather. The next thing we want to do is we want to figure out if the hope user has any elevated privileges. So the elevated privileges would give them access to the WinRM service. So when the WinRM service is basically an administrator login tool, and because it says that the hope user has WinRM access, it says that we've pwned the system. The thing is that the reason why it says that we've pwned the system here is because WinRM access is usually restricted to administrators, and since we have if we actually have administrator access to the system with WinRM, that means that we essentially have full control of the system. But we'll see that this is not the case. Okay, so since we've got this credential pair here, we can access WinRM with a particular tool on Kali Linux, which is called Evil-Winrm. So Evil-Winrm is a tool that we can use to log into the WinRM service. We have to specify an IP address here, a user, and also a password. Okay, so let's go ahead and log into the system using Evil-Winrm. Okay, so Evil-Winrm starts up. It starts us up in a PowerShell script over here, a PowerShell terminal rather. If we ask who am I, it says we are the hope user. Hold on. Okay, so that means we've broken into the box, and you know what that means? That means we have to put on our scary hacker voice and call on the powers of scary hacker voice man. Just a second.
Hey everybody, it's me, Scary Hacker Voice Man. Scary Hacker Voice Man comes out every time we break into a system, and we've broken in. Well, Mr. Admin Web administrator, it looks like you left a little note on your web server that gave away your username. We used that username and we brute forced the password for the SMB service. And from there, we figured out that this user can use WinRM. That was a big mistake. Maybe you knew about these security misconfigurations, or maybe you decided to accept the risk. Well, you accepted the risk. And now we're in.
All right, so we've gotten into the system, and there are many different ways we could try to look for privilege escalation on this target. Of course, privilege escalation is basically trying to figure out how we can become the highest level of user on the system. So if we take a look at the privileges for our user on the system, we can see that we can shut down the system, we can undock. Not too sure what that privilege is, but we don't have any privileges that could give us upgraded privileges on the system. And if we take a look at what groups this user is part of, we don't see that we see that they're not part of the administrator's group. So we don't have full access over the system. So an interesting thing that we can do, actually, we were talking about this earlier when we were talking about the history files. So we're going to access a history file in order to figure out how to compromise the system. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So over here, our method of privilege escalation on this target is the PowerShell command history file. So on Windows systems, PowerShell commands are saved in a history file for each user in the users, username, app data, roaming, Microsoft Windows, PowerShell, PS readline, console host history.txt file. And if this file exists for a particular user, we can take a look at, we can access that file. We might be able to access some sensitive information. So let's go ahead and access it on this system and figure out if there's any sensitive information. Okay, so let me clear CLS. Can't do either of these things. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look and see if this file exists. So it's going to be users, hope, app data, roaming, Microsoft Windows, PowerShell, PS readline. Okay, so in this, so one thing that's convenient about Windows is that it's not case sensitive. So even if you see that some directory names are capitalized or not capitalized, it doesn't matter. Just type them in all lowercase and it's fine. We see that the console host history file is here. So what we're going to do is we're going to type it out. Console host history.txt. So there's only one command here. So this is set local user, name administrator, password, converts it to secure string, super administrator 123, as plain text, force. So we basically see the command that was used to change the administrator user's password and what the password was changed to. So what we can do is we can try to figure out if we can log into the system as the administrator. So we're going to go back to netexec. Oh, this is netexec. All right, let's exit from here. And let's use netexec and see if the, how do you spell that? Administrator. If the administrator user is indeed using this as their password. Okay, so this came back positive. So we've got the administrator with this password over here, and they have access to the WinRM service. So because we have terminal access as the administrator user, we've basically finished this exercise because the administrator user has full permissions over everything on the box. So what we need to do next is we need to use Evil-Winrm. To log into the system. Okay, so we are now the administrator user with WinRM, and we are the administrator. And if we take a look at what groups we're part of, we're part of the administrators group, which means we have full access to the file system. So all we need to do now is we need to go over to the administrator directory and read the flag, the root.txt file, which is how we prove that we finished the exercise. So let's go into administrator. We don't have file autocomplete. So it's usually going to be in this desktop directory, and we see that the root.txt file is here. When we read the file and we submit it over to VulNyx, actually we don't have. The interesting thing about VulNyx, the VulNyx website, is that there's no place to submit any flags. But I guess this is just so you know that you finished the challenge. How you do that is you read the root.txt file. We're not actually going to read the root.txt file because the organizers over at the VulNyx website, they don't want people to reveal the flag contents on walkthroughs and YouTube videos. So what we're going to do is we're just going to read the file, but redirect the output into a file called iRead_root.txt. We see here that the file size of both of these files are the same, and we were able to access the root.txt file, which means we've effectively finished the challenge. Okay, everybody, that was a guided walkthrough for the admin challenge over at VulNyx.com. If you enjoyed this guided walkthrough, please click on the like and subscribe buttons on the video and leave a comment underneath the video. But until next time, HackerFrogs out!
Hey there, HackerFrogs! Are you enjoying this workshop? Learning new concepts and skills? If so, there's a way you can support the channel, and it's totally free. Just click on the subscribe button below the video. Also, click on the like button. And if you have questions or comments on this workshop, please leave them below the video. Thanks for listening. And now, back to our scheduled programming.